Every August, across the Indian subcontinent, millions of sisters tie a sacred thread around their brothers' wrists. It is a domestic ritual honoring biological bonds and a promise of mutual support. But if you try to trace the origin of this specific family tradition, the historical record points to two massive geopolitical legends. The first takes us to 326 BCE. Fearing for her husband's life, Princess Roxana secretly approaches the enemy, Indian King Porus. She ties a thread to his wrist, securing a vow that he will spare Alexander the Great on the battlefield. The second involves a 16th century siege. Facing total destruction, Rajput Queen Karnavati sends a Rakhi to the Mughal Emperor Humayun, appealing to him as an adopted brother for military salvation. Rigorous historical audits reveal a startling truth about both of these stories. Neither event actually happened. The exhaustive accounts of classical Greek historians contain no mention of Roxana visiting the enemy camp. That entire narrative was fabricated for a 1939 Bollywood epic called Sikandar, and over the decades, cinematic fiction blurred into accepted fact. Similarly, contemporary Persian chronicles of Emperor Humayun's reign make no mention of a silken thread. That legend was popularized centuries later in an 1829 book by British colonial administrator James Todd. Todd relied on unverified oral folklore to craft a narrative. By depicting a Mughal emperor failing to rescue his Rajput sister in time, the story discouraged historical Rajput-Muslim alliances and conceptually united the Rajputs with the British under a shared romanticized chivalric code. We can track this evolution through the dictionary. This timeline graphic maps historical definitions of the Rakhi. In the 1850s, it is defined as an amulet tied by priests to ward off misfortune. The strictly biological brother-sister definition does not formally solidify until the 1990s. With cinematic fiction and colonial propaganda cleared away, we can look at how this ritual actually operated. It functioned as a highly adaptable piece of social technology. By the mid-18th century, the Mughal Empire was declining. Relentless Afghan invasions plunged the Punjab region into severe political instability and lawlessness. To restore order, a powerful Sikh military confederacy known as the Dal Khalsa implemented a formalized agrarian administration in 1753. They simply called it the Rakhi system. The Rakhi of the 18th century functioned as a legal status within the Sikh administration. It denoted a tributary protectorate that allowed the confederacy to govern territories far beyond their direct military reach. The Dal Khalsa guaranteed military protection to vulnerable farming communities against foreign invaders and local bandits. In exchange, villages remitted 20% of the harvest yield. This tributary scheme filled the power vacuum left by the Mughals, expanding Sikh territorial control. The historical power of the Rakhi was its capacity to forge an institutionalized socio-economic contract. This specific administrative system laid the direct groundwork for the rise of the Sikh Empire. A century later, a different kind of crisis emerged. In 1905, the British Viceroy Lord Curzon issued a controversial edict to partition the Bengal presidency strictly along religious lines. The colonial administration claimed it was an administrative necessity. Indian leaders identified it as a divide-and-rule tactic meant to pit Hindus and Muslims against each other and fracture the growing independence movement. The British scheduled the partition to legally take effect on October 16th. By a stroke of historical synchronicity, this date fell on the sacred full moon of Shravana, the day of the Raksha Bandhan festival. Recognizing the symbolic potential of the moment, Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore chose to re-engineer the ritual into an instrument of mass civil disobedience. He urged citizens to take this private ritual out into the streets. Tagore called upon everyone to tie threads onto each other's wrists, forging a public vow of mutual protection against the colonial borders being drawn. When Tagore reached the local mosque and tied the sacred threads onto the wrists of Muslim clerics, the ritual became a shared public statement. This act signaled that the responsibility of communal protection belonged to both faiths, directly challenging the religious borders the British were drawing. By scaling the concept of guardianship from the family to the nation, this socio-cultural resistance overwhelmed the colonial administration. The resulting movement forced the British to revoke the partition and reunify Bengal in 1911. So how did a ritual used for anti-colonial protests and agrarian taxation shrink back down into a private celebration for brothers and sisters? As communal protectorates and mass political movements faded, the ritual's scope narrowed toward the immediate family. In the transition to urban life, the ceremony focused on the biological sibling bond, which was increasingly codified as the primary expression of the festival. The power of pop culture to shape religious practice is illustrated by the 1975 Bollywood blockbuster film Jai Santoshi Ma. The film's narrative codified the birth of a brand new goddess, Santoshi Ma, explicitly to fulfill a modern narrative necessity, giving Lord Ganesha's sons a sister so they could celebrate Raksha Bandhan. Today, the semiotics of the festival are evolving once again. Women frequently tie threads for their female friends, while citizens offer them to civic workers and military personnel as a recognition of systemic support. We are even seeing modern ecological adaptations. Across India, activists are tying Rakis to trees, expanding the ancient vow into a pledge to protect the biosphere in exchange for life-sustaining resources. Raksha Bandhan remains a living piece of social technology. Whether building 18th century empires, fighting British partition, or protecting the natural environment, its core ethos, the sacred, unconditional obligation to protect, survives because it continually adapts to meet the anxieties of any era.